Welcome to Studio with your local lay Dominicans. We'll be discussing some of the gems we've discovered in our studium, where we share the fruits of our contemplation and the joy of the gospel message. Representing our St. Albert the Great lay Dominican chapter and co-hosts of today's show are myself, Cheryl Drozda,
Jeff Drozda,
and Becky See.
And we're so excited. I'm very excited about this episode, in particular because we're going to be discussing a special blessed, the first millennial blessed, that has been up for canonization, and many of you probably have already heard of him, Blessed Carlo Acutis. I had the honor and privilege of visiting his tomb recently here. It's in Assisi.
Twice
this past few months, within this year. And it's been a blessing to get to know him even more after that. I'll have to share, if you hang on for a little bit later, I'll share a little bit of a story about something funny that happened, and it just shows the interaction that he has with people. I think it'll be fun to hear. So, Becky, you really had a desire to talk about Blessed Carlo. What drew you to him?
One day I was driving back from Dallas, Texas, and on one of the radio stations they were interviewing his mother. Well, I knew nothing about him. But when she started talking about him, I said, I've got to learn more on this. And so that's why I decided to pursue in reviewing his life, and also to help me as I teach young people that are learning to become Catholic. And they look for him. They always want someone that's closer to their age. Some of them take the other saints, but they want the ones that they can relate to. So that's where I got my wants.
And so what we've learned about him is so amazing. I know that his family wasn't originally even practicing their faith. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Not regularly. They did go, no. Easter, Christmas, but they were not even going every Sunday to Mass or whatever. He actually challenged them to
what he did was he never passed a church without going in to say hello to Jesus. And this action actually led his mother and father back to the church.
Wow. And I heard that part of that reason they first had, because his parents were, I don't want to say worldly, but they kind of were. I mean, they were both working. They lived in Milan, which was pretty much the center of, the economic center and heart of while Rome is the more spiritual center. Milan is more the Versace, all that. Mm-hmm. So they had a nanny, and she was from Poland, and I can't remember her name, but all I know is she came and she had a whole bunch of holy cards, and she would teach him to do this. She would teach him the rosary, to walk into Mass and say hello to Jesus, walk into churches, say hello to Jesus. And so it's very interesting, her influence on him. And so he went on, growing in this faith, right? And
absolutely. He always said that the Eucharist is my highway to heaven. And also, if we get in front, for instance, he used this as an analogy. If you get in front of the sun, you get suntans. However, when you get in front of Jesus in the Eucharist, you become saints.
Nice. Carlo was, he just like many kids, he was born in what year?
1991.
Okay. And he was influenced by, his parents were in London for a period of time. He was very much influenced by the computer technology of the time that was just developing, not the things we have today, social media, but, computer programming. And I can relate to this. I'm a little older than he would have been, but I was into that type of stuff too. So this is really neat because he was on the cutting edge of some of the developments in technology. But what did he use that for?
Well, first, as he was growing up, his mother said he only allowed himself 1 hour a day to be on the computer.
Right.
And
that's himself.
Himself,
not his parents.
Himself. And then what he eventually used it for is the cataloging. He wrote a website and started cataloging all the Eucharistic miracles. Somewhere around 183 he cataloged. And he went and visited some, but not all 183.
So with his like desire, his interest in technology. He learned how to program, and then he used that time to promote Eucharistic adoration, devotion, people to understand, because as he understood that there were people who didn't understand the true presence of our Lord, body, blood, soul, and divinity in the Eucharist, which makes this all the more appropriate topic for, as we're in the time of Eucharist right now, the Jubilee of the Eucharist.
And there are so many Eucharistic miracles that, people think about that, miracles don't take place today, or maybe they took place a while ago, but you can go around the world and for yourself see right in front of your own eyes miracles taking place all across the world. And, these are the Eucharistic miracles that throughout the world you can go see. I know when we were in Lanciano, that's an 8th century Eucharistic miracle that even today you can go and see the Eucharist itself, and at certain times it will liquefy, it will bleed, and so the flesh that is in the monstrance is still preserved today, and it has been investigated and researched time and time again, and the scientists have proven that this is blood, and there's no doubt about that. And what is also interesting is that on all of the Eucharistic miracles across the world, you will find the same type of flesh that in the monstrance, which is a flesh of the heart, and it is also traumatized. They can tell that it's been traumatized, and also it's the same blood type. And so God is continuing to send us these miracles to have us, wake up and adore Christ, especially in the Blessed Sacrament. And I think this is what Blessed Carlo Acutis was trying to do, trying to have everyone wake up to these miracles that are right before our eyes today.
And that was one of his favorite Eucharistic miracles, because of all the science that's gone into it, the study, and you said the same blood type, which is AB, type AB, which happens to be one of the rarest forms of blood, right? So it's very interesting, and I think that was one of his favorites, is what one of the things I read.
Absolutely. He had a life where he was ready to die. He always said, I am happy to die because I've lived my life without wasting a minute on those things which do not please God. After he spent his hour a day playing on the computer, he spent the rest of his time in good works, helping the poor, the elderly, children. He actually chatted with many migrants, standing sponsor for one when he got baptized. As a young adult is when he was doing this.
Well, actually, I think that if this is the same one, he had, after his initial nanny, who probably, I think, lived with them till he was like 5, but then they hired some people for tutoring who would be not sort of like a nanny, but later it was so, and I can't think of his name, but he was from India, so this might be who you're referring to, but he was not raised in anywhere near the Catholic faith or anything. Definitely his parents tried to instill some of the beliefs from his native country, and but because of he was confused by a lot of that. He tried to pray in his native or his I guess family's religion, but over time he had a lot of questions. When he met Carlo and he started following him around, and he would go in when Carlo insisted on going into the church. He'd sit in the back and watch him during adoration. And then what he would remark is that when he came out, Carlo was different than when he went in. And when he went in, he changed because there was something different happening there, and he knew it. But when he came out, he had this person go with him to sell some of his toys so that he could give, I guess, food and other clothes and so forth, so he could feed the hungry, right? Feed and clothe the hungry. And so he lived his faith, and this had such an impact that that person converted. and so did his mother, who came to visit, was in her cultural garb, and would go, and sometimes Carlo would have to defend people, not only at a school, friends against bullies, but also when this person's mother came to visit and was in a serape, she got some words said to her by some of the children, and he said, please be respectful. I mean, it was very, for his age, to do something like that was just extraordinary. And they both became Catholic, by the way, both the mother and the son. And just, it's unbelievable. And we're talking about a boy who's like
died
8,
at
9,
age,
10.
and he died at 15.
He died at 15.
Yes.
So many conversions happened in his lifetime. People and his grandparents, so his whole family essentially came back to their faith, and because of him, because of this little boy. Just, it's very moving. And as a matter of fact, when I got to go to Assisi and visit his tomb, there was also the opportunity, I went with John Paul the Great Academy in their junior class, that we got to go to the Basilica in Assisi. And now there's a special reliquary there that has his heart on display in particular. So while you can see Carlos laying in rest in his tomb in the glass coffin in a different church in Assisi, and the Basilica is a reliquary with his heart. So I'm looking at his heart, and I'm asking him to set our hearts on fire for the Eucharist and all the children that are with us and everything. And so one of the students came up and said, Mrs. Drozda, I can't see it very well through, the way they have it. And I'm like, and I leaned forward, and I heard something that I just kept leaning forward, trying to see if I could get a better view. And all of a sudden, the boy yelled, "You're on fire!" And he started patting my shoulder, and my hair had caught on fire on the votive candle as I was leaning in to see Carlo's heart. And I thought, okay. So anyway, after enduring everybody saying this chaperone's on fire, a few verses, I now have a story to tell about how Carlos, when I asked him to set my heart on fire, accidentally got my hair. So I think that's and it just kind of goes with his lively, I don't know, because they often say he was a little bit of cut up in school. They have a few notes in his file where he was the laughter and boisterous one every now and then. So
in other words, you're saying there's hope for all of us.
Yes, that's right.
Well, you're listening to Christ Our King Catholic Radio for Acadiana. We are your Third Order Dominicans, or lay Dominicans, and this is Studium to Studio, brought to you by Stein Lumber. We thank Stein Lumber, and they have locations throughout all of Acadiana. And you can hear us every Thursday at 4 p.m., 90.5 FM, 99.5 FM, and 12:30 a.m. And we would like you to join us every Thursday at this time. And today we're talking about Blessed Carlo Acutis. And now, I'm not sure if he has his canonization date yet, but we know it's going to be next year.
You're absolutely right. What they talked about, if we talk about how the two miracles that he needed to be prepared to be canonized was the one of healing a young boy. One notable miracle was inexplicable healing of a young Brazilian boy named Mathis. He was suffering from a rare pancreatic disorder, and the doctors had exhausted all medical, said he was grave. His mother, a devout Catholic, turned to prayer and sought the intercession of Blessed Carlo. After she prayed to Carlo for his intercession, he experienced a sudden and complete healing, and the doctors could not believe it. And the other one was the healing of this young lady went in 2022, a mother named Lillian visited the tomb of Carlo Acutis. Now, didn't get the hair put on fire, but was praying for her daughter who had suffered severe head trauma from a bicycle accident in July of that year. Well, They were saying it was dire, requiring emergency surgery, little or no hope for survival. Remarkably, on the very day of her visit, the young girl began breathing on her own, regaining movement and speech shortly after, and a CAT scan revealed her hemorrhage had vanished.
That was the same day that her mother visited Carlo's tomb.
Yes.
That's really amazing. And also, okay, so I do think the young girl's name was Valeria.
Yes.
And she was from Costa Rica, but was in Italy at the time, and the family was visiting Italy. And that's how the mother ended up at Carlo's tomb. The Brazilian boy, Mateus, he was 4 years old. So he had suffered with, like, basically vomiting all the time. Like, he couldn't stop vomiting. And what I heard is that they went to a prayer service, and the mother knew that they had to go, and he prayed that Blessed Carlo would help him to stop throwing up, vomiting. And on the way home, he said, "I'm well. I'm cured." So he's 4 years old. He's coming back from a prayer meeting. He just asked, "I want to stop throwing up," and he tells his mom, and that's it. He was, it was truly a miracle. He had no more illness to deal with after all he'd been through. So I had also heard at his funeral, they sprinkled rose petals all over his tomb. So his mother, lovingly, like a devoted mom, picked up the rose petals and collected them. And then she thought, I'll share them with people so that they can, have some grace and peace. And so one of them went back to Brazil. I think it was taken to Brazil, and which is interesting because the little boy was from Brazil as well. But that particular petal has not died. It is acting as if it were still connected to the stem itself. It's still active. There's so many things about Carlo, but the biggest thing is just his determination to, in spite of the world the way it is, having all its distractions and enjoying those distractions, but with temperance. I think that's what Carlo teaches us, that we can actually, use the media, use the things that are out there, but we have to do it with temperance and with one thing in our hearts, to always know, love, and serve God.
He serves as a model for young people also, seeking to navigate the digital world and not spend their whole day on the digital world, but remaining faithful to the gospel. His life reminds us that holiness for all who seek to follow Christ, regardless of their age or vocation. He told young Catholics to use their talents for the glory of God and spreading of the gospel. And to answer your question, Jeff, he was beatified in October of 20. His second miracle was confirmed in May of 24. And Pope Francis has granted approval in July to continue his canonization process. No date has been set. However, the Vatican says it is probably going to be during 2025, during the 2025 Jubilee.
So I heard one of the reports say, late in 2025, and his feast day is October 12th. So if you're betting on getting and trying to get a room in Rome for this, maybe October 12th might be a good day to look forward to. So.
For sure.
And some people might be wondering how Carlo passed away, because here we're talking about his death and everything, and he was only 15. He was believed to just have like a flu, and it was. He went into the hospital, though, and he knew he wasn't going to come out. He literally told his mom, I'd like to come home with you, but I'm not going to come home alive. And somehow he knew it was the end, and he was diagnosed with leukemia, mm-hmm. and a very, I think it's called acute promyelectic leukemia, if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's very fast, aggressive is what the word I was looking for, very aggressive, and within a week of his diagnosis, he passed away.
And when he heard it, he took it so calmly, unlike what I would do if it was me, immediately offering all of his sufferings to the Pope,
yes,
to the Church,
yes,
and his own direct entry into heaven, because to be known, he didn't want to go to purgatory. He said, I'm happy to die because I've lived my life without wasting a minute on those things which do not please God.
I just think that's amazing. That's something that we should think about every day when we wake up.
He always told his mother, because they didn't wake her up in the minute he died, but he told his mother, I will send you, let you know. So he sent a little thought that he was in heaven. And then 2 years, I think, at the day of his death, she delivered twins.
Yes.
One little girl, one little boy.
Yes.
And
And she considered that the sign.
That was his sign, yes.
Well, and I think, the way he approached death is a wonderful example to all of us. Number one, we need to be prepared spiritually. Obviously, confession, making sure that we are in the state of grace as often as possible, because we don't know when that day is going to happen. It could happen today, tomorrow, next year, 10, 20 years from now. We just don't know. And number two, having that calmness is, shows that even though he was 15, he was very, very mature for his age. And it's a lesson for all of us on how can we now, we've heard his story. He'll be canonized next year, the year of Jubilee. How can we imitate what he showed us in terms of preparing for death and accepting it? And I think that's something that we all can walk away with, is how can we prepare spiritually? How can we prepare our minds and hearts for that day to come? Because it will come. We definitely know that. But we have these wonderful saints to look forward to. And Blessed Carlo Acutis is just another fantastic example.
And I would recommend for people to explore those Eucharistic miracles. I think if that's something like what is all this about? What are these Eucharistic miracles about? Look up Carlo Acutis' website on the Eucharistic miracles. I'll give it to you in Latin, but you might want to you could look it up in English, but miracolieucharistici.org is how you would say it. But you can just Google some of the, Google Blessed Carlo Acutis. That's Acutis, and look up his Eucharistic miracle site, and you'll be able to get a lot more information about all the amazing, what'd you say, Becky, over 180 Eucharistic miracles. And one includes St. Francis of Rome. And without going into detail about that particular miracle, I just wanted to share that I visited her tomb as well in Rome and did not know this connection, which was really neat. As well as Jeff and I went to Our Lady of Pompeii in Pompeii, Italy, and he loved to visit there. It was one of his favorite places. And of course, we know that's a very Dominican church, and it's where his love of the rosary was just extremely accelerated, and where he knew he had to begin to also promote prayer to the rosary. Always his devotion and adoration was, his...
to Mary.
Yes.
So if you're looking for that Dominican connection, that
yes, I'm connecting it to...
That's it.
Also, I will say there's one other Dominican connection that I remember hearing about in doing some research is in Milan, because his family mostly raised him in Milan. I'll tell you, they did buy a summer home in Assisi, and that's how the connection came, later in his life. They bought the summer home in Assisi, and Carlo felt very much at home in Assisi. And the bishop of Assisi said, it's amazing, after all those years, another St. Francis has been born to us. I mean, his spirit and everything about him was very much like St. Francis. But back to Milan, where he was mostly raised, and there's a church where the Da Vinci Last Supper painting is, and it's a Dominican church. I don't know the name in Italian right now, but it's also a Dominican church that was a big influence in his life. So,
and talk about Eucharistic miracles. On that site you can find a whole list of them, and one that they're all. You can't make this stuff up. It is so absolutely amazing. One of which are the miracle of the hosts in Siena. And the story goes that there was a special festival going on for the Feast of the Assumption. And while the festival was going on, some thieves stole a golden ciborium containing 100 or 200 consecrated hosts. So 2 days later, they found these hosts in another church. It was in an offertory box, and it was dirty, it had cobwebs all over it, and so they weren't going to consume them. So they were going to simply, let them sit and deteriorate as you're supposed to do in these circumstances. But what was amazing to them is that they never deteriorated. And over the next few decades, they noticed that their appearance looked like flesh. So they began researching it, and even to this day, over 290 years later, you can go to the Basilica of St. Francis in Siena and see the hosts and how their flesh is still in the same appearance today. So it's always extremely fascinating. So go to his website and learn a little bit more about him, about the Eucharistic miracles. And there's also one aspect of the site that's on there, and it talks about angels and demons and why it is so important just to understand the relationship to the saints and to us. And in that on that site, you can learn a little bit more about what the church teaches on that. And we are in a spiritual warfare, and I think Blessed Carlo realized that, and that's why he had such a strong devotion, and it's something that he realized. And even to this day, we have there's spiritual warfare going on right now, and especially for those of you who have families. There is a book out there called A Family Guide to Spiritual Warfare, Strategies for Deliverance and Healing. It's by Kathleen Beckman. And she does a lot of work in the deliverance area, and also does a lot of work at the Pope Leo XIII Institute right outside of Chicago. And those are the things that we can also keep in mind as we prepare ourselves to enter into heaven. We hope we go directly there, but still we are in this fight here on this earth, and so learning and understanding just a little bit about that, saying the prayers for yourself, for your families, especially for dads that are out there. You have a special responsibility for your entire family, and there are special prayers that you can say that helps protect you and your family, because you have that spiritual obligation and you will be held accountable for that. And so, once again, take a look at this, go to the website, find a little bit more about that, and especially the Eucharistic miracles that are out there.
And I just want to say, I've been looking at all of his comments, all of the things that he told people, and this is the one that really struck me. Sadness is looking at ourselves. Happiness is looking towards God. Carlo would always say the only thing we have to ask God for in prayer is the desire to be holy.
And another one of his mottos or saying is that everyone is born as original, but many die as photocopies.
Yeah, some great sayings. And also, I just want to give people encouragement. If you haven't had a chance to go visit Carlo at the Sanctuary of the Renunciation in Santa Maria Maggiore in Assisi, I want to share something he said about going to the Holy Land, because at one point his family wanted him to go to the Holy Land because he was showing all this interest in the gospel and sharing it. And he was younger at the time. This was before he did some of the Eucharistic miracles and visited those. He actually said, I don't need to go where Jesus walked 2,000 years ago. He's right here in the Holy Eucharist. And so I think that's something we need to not take for granted in our own lives. So remember to stand firm in the absolute truth, Jesus Christ, because only the truth bears grace.
Lived through time, passed through fire, broke my heart, wounded desire, changed my life, fixed the past, stared at death and it stared back, standing fast in the light of the word. A shotgun blast was the last thing I heard. I rattled in the wind like